Hey everyone, welcome to the Dad Cartel podcast. I'm excited to bring you conversations with great dads from across the country. Please follow the Dad Cartel on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok if you found value in this episode. And please share it with other dads to help create a great dad culture. And if you're interested in participating as a guest, please email me at prouddad@dadcartel.com. Today, I'm joined by JoJo, also known as the Border Bandit TX on TikTok. Thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. You know what? You were one of the people that responded to the recent video I did where I was basically just saying, "Hey, I want to talk to dads." And I'm curious, what was it about the video, the message, whatever it was that made you want to reach out?
Your I would say your channel is there's a lot of great dads out there, but
Mm,
there's not a lot of great dad channels out there.
yeah,
There's not a lot of maybe there's about a handful that I follow that are similar to yours. So I was like,
yeah,
oh, right on. You're taking guests. You're taking. I feel the same way that you feel about everything. I think kind of like-minded dads can have a big impact in the future and in their own home, and even the kids around them. A good dad is good to have even in like the neighborhood or the village, so to say.
yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I'm glad it could resonate with so many people, right? And I think that's why I started Dad Cartel was really because I felt like there was a void there in a place where dads can come together and talk about everything to do with being a dad, from advice to pitfalls to avoid to trying to just figure things out and trying to have a place where we can actually talk, right? And talk amongst ourselves and do that. And I'll talk a little bit later about this community that I'm actually building where it's actually a forum where we can post things and ask questions and post resources and just a place where we can actually go to when we have a question or when we figure something out. We're like, wow, I want to share this with other dads so they don't have to struggle like I did. So I'll dive into that a little bit later. But hey, just tell us about your dad origin story. How did it work for you? Give us that story.
Yeah, so right now I have three girls. So I'm what they refer to as a girl dad. So
Awesome.
I got a lot of my stuff is it's a different perspective. It's a little bit
Yeah.
the the mall bill might be a little bit higher for me for in comparison to other dads maybe. But it was so funny because I hate the term. So my wife already had two girls when I met her. So I
Mhm.
hate the term a step parent or a stepdad because I feel
Yeah.
like it undermines being a parent. I
Yeah.
don't know. It almost feels unrelatable when people talk, when people say it, but it's more of a technicality is how I view it. But it was so natural. They're awesome. They were great. I met them. I want to say when they were maybe 7 and 5. It was
Yeah.
awesome, and we grew and everything was great and still is great. And so I had the dad part figured out from third grade and up. From third grade
Yeah.
to fifth grade, I had it on. I knew, like, riding the bikes, going to the parks, everything. And
Yeah.
then last year, our newborn, she's one now, she was born on Valentine's Day. I thought I had everything already kind of, been in the mix and know what's going on. But the
Yeah.
newborn is it's a different ball game again. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
but I have a my oldest and my middle, they help out a ton. So I'm like, I can't
Yeah.
imagine, and I already had everything. The work schedule was already pretty much based around the school time. And my wife is great, but
Yeah.
it's a totally different. I'm sorry, I'll let you get to it. I'm like, it's a totally different each grade, each progression, even when we hit middle school,
Yeah.
different problems, different parenting tactics and parenting, what do we do? And my wife always tells our oldest that we're learning together, because
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, she's the first,
Yeah.
and just some of the stuff we gotta tell her, hey, this is our first time kind of being, middle school parents, or our first time being, we don't really know what to do, but we're kind of all
Yeah.
in it together.
Yeah, you figure it out, right? And so, you hit on a point that I've heard before, and I think it's worth calling out, right? The dads who step in and you know, there's some cliches out there, right? But step up and actually take care of the children of their partner, right? When they decide to start a relationship with someone who already has children, you know, and they don't see them as, you know, other, you know, they see them, okay, now I've decided to take this on. They're my children now, right? And you know, that's different for everyone, I would imagine, depending on, you know, is there a father in their life, you know, biological father in their life or not, or you know, that varies across the board, right? But you're still a dad to them in a
Mhm.
capacity, right? And you know, it's refreshing to hear that a lot of men are starting to take that position, right? Of, you know, I am the dad, right? And I'm gonna treat them like they're my kids. And you know, it's important to do that, I think. And you know, to your point, now you're in this unique position where or not so unique. I guess it's more common. You're having more of a blended family, right? You have
Mhm.
another child with your wife, and you know that's that. Well, talk to me about kind of that. More about the, I guess, how do you integrate that, right? Now you have a child with your wife. What is it like now as a newborn? What was it like, I guess, you know, bringing your other kids to see your newborn at the hospital? What was that like?
Well, it was you know, kind of on the lighter end of the COVID time frame. You know, we couldn't get too many guests or anything at the hospital, so
Yeah.
it felt at the beginning. It felt you know, the girls, you know, our girls weren't there, and it felt like it hadn't been really completed. You know, that feeling, and until they came home, they were a little apprehensive on, you know, the attention's going to be spread out. And I heard a good analogy. I want to say it was on another. I think it was on one of the dad episodes or one of the clips that they cut, and it was when you have another kid, it's not you got to pull some love from here and love from here, and then that kid gets that
Yeah.
love. It's like you love them just as much, and you know, you never
Yeah.
run out of how much love you could spread around. um
Yeah.
but they were a little apprehensive. The oldest was a little apprehensive at first, all the way leading up to it. But the first, I guess, nose boop, where she boops the nose, it was
Yeah.
over from there.
Oh
She was
man.
she was latched on and went into, you know, the big sister mode that she's prepared with, and they're on it. It is a different side of them that you know, I knew that they're great. They you know, they excel in school. They're great kids, but there's certain things that you can't predict, and it
Yeah.
went as fluid and as beautiful as you could probably, you know, imagine.
That's amazing. Yeah. I would imagine that that's a beautiful moment when you see your kids meet their new sibling and then, you know, them interacting with them and just seeing that innocence, right? Of like,
Mhm.
wow, this is our new friend, right? And then seeing
Yeah.
them interact, that's beautiful. Yeah, awesome. So what were you know, you probably had some expectations going into being a dad. What were those expectations and what do you think you figured out along the way as you started, you know, having more experience in the role?
I would say probably like probably probably talking to them. I think since when I first met the girls, they were in elementary. I think they, you know, they could already tell me how they feel. They can already tell me what they're nervous about or scared about. You know, you kind of you get to know them. You get to know them, you know. So I think that really helped us out, you know, because nowadays, you know, we can all talk about issues, or we could talk about what has them, you know, nervous or little fears or stuff. And it helps with even understanding them more, even like because the way I grew up, it was like you didn't really talk to your dad too much, or he was just kind of the you know, the authoritative figure. He was kind of the one that you were scared of. You were kind of hush hush around. And
Yeah.
with the girls, I think it's like I wouldn't even say that. I still tell them like, hey, we gotta listen to your mom, or we gotta, you know, and I back my wife with everything, but they don't, you know, they don't fear me or anything like that. But you know,
Yeah.
I just have, you know, I don't even think I can really ground. That's one of the things we're kind of struggling with is nowadays it's so different. We're like, we give them everything. And we're like, oh, it's hard to, you always want to, you know, like, we're like, I'm trying to word it.
It's like you want to spoil them, but you also don't want to spoil them, right? Like you don't
Exactly.
want
You
you
don't
don't
want yeah, it's so
the
funny.
blowback.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. You want you want the straight discipline, the total discipline, but you're like, you don't want to do any disciplining at all. I think that's
yeah,
the funniest part.
yeah.
But
No, that's
one of the things that I think is a good point is like when I was a kid and I got grounded and I stayed in my room for like, I don't know, a month or something. No TV. Of course, there was no electronics, but it was like that was like that was me being grounded. But I tell my wife that like when we limit the electronics or when we take away like the iPad or something, that is the equivalent to what your big punishment was when you were a kid. And so you kind of have to go off of that, off of their own, kind of level
yeah.
of in troubleness.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. One of the points you mentioned where, you and I and our generation really grew up with those like stoic, very serious kind of dads. I'm Mexican, so Mexican culture, it's very much that, right? The dad comes home from work, he's tired, he's angry, he's gonna, kick back on the recliner or something, drink a beer and just eat his dinner, and that
Yeah.
type of thing. Kind of got to tiptoe around, right? You're not getting asked the question, how was your day? You're lucky if you kind of do have that, and that's, that varies. So I'm generalizing a bit, but it's a lot of that. And the shift, at least for me, was thinking, I don't want that. I didn't like that as a kid, so I'm going to shift that with my daughter, and I'm going to make sure that I make my day all about her, and really trying to figure out, how can I support her, and how can I prioritize her even when I have a lot going on, because that's never going to end, right? We're always going to have work's always going to be there, household responsibilities will always be there, trying to do different things, passions that you have on your own and pursue, right, will always be there. But how can we prioritize their needs above our own? And that's what I constantly think about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we always have dinner together, and that's huge. And my wife does this. We have this tradition where you do your high point of the day and your low point of the day, and
Love that.
yeah, they love it because it gives you a chance that you hear about their bad part of the day, and then that's your way, like that's your opening to kind of help them kind of flip how they feel about it or how they view it.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's powerful. It gives them an outlet of, it's part of what we were mentioning, right? If we want to communicate with our kids, then we need to give them that outlet, right? And we need to give them the opportunity to bring these things up that may be difficult for them to bring up, right? They may feel apprehensive, or they may feel nervous, or whatever it is, right? But creating that open dialogue, that's beautiful, man. I think that would go such a long way. I'm gonna take that too, and implement that when the time comes, right? When I'm past the cooing and into
Yeah,
the small sentences.
yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. So there's a lot, I think when people think of dads, the first thing they think of is, right, provider and financial provider. But that's a very important element, and I think every person would pretty much agree with that. But in terms of non-financial contributions, what do you think are some of the most important non-financial contributions that a dad can make?
yeah. I would say one is I think um, if you're still like for me, I think it's important for the girls to see that their mom, my wife, that I love her, that
Yeah,
I always put her first. I always give give that dad like oh, someone asked mom for directions at the grocery store or something, and I
yeah,
tell them like, oh, if I was there, I would have beat him up, just little jokes like that, just so they
yeah,
know that like dad is all about mom, and because they're going to naturally one day, as much as I hate to think about it and I hate to try and avoid it as much, one day they're going to end up with someone that's going to have similar characteristics to what they're used to seeing in a relationship. So I
yeah,
always, me and my wife always try and, well, even when we have our disagreements and stuff, we try and talk it out, no yelling, none of this, no stuff like that. I know that stuff happens for a lot of people, but we just try to for the girls, and even for us, it's not good for us to be battling it out when, with issues or small stuff.
yeah,
But I think number one thing is to, other than finances and stuff like that, is your time, and then how they see you as a dad, as a man, as that figure, because
mm,
one day they're going to gravitate to a similar figure, and you don't want
yeah,
that figure to be prioritizing work over them, because they're going to end up with someone that's working all the time and say, that's how he shows that he loves me, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I really think that the dad sets the baseline for what a daughter specifically would accept in a partner, right? And it's important, and vice versa, obviously for the mother, I think for the son. But I think it's important that the dad set that example, right? Like things that you mentioned, right? Saying, that you love your wife, and even making those playful jokes, right? That you're a protector, that you
Mhm.
care about your wife, and that you do anything for her. That type of thing goes such a long way, and I think it'll resonate because I make the joke of, we all see kind of on Instagram and social media, where we'll see a young woman say, I went to Miami, and says like, take me back, right? That thing. And Miami is this big like dream vacation for some, right? And that's not a bad thing, but it's if that's if you're setting a low baseline for yourself, that's not good, right? And usually as a dad, if you set a low baseline, uh for an example as a man, then that's what your daughter will see, right? So trying to be the best man that you can be, trying to be respectful and teach all these different values and leading by example, I think that goes such a long way, man, because kids see more than we think. And I see it with my wife's siblings. They pick up all these little things. I'll have cuts on my hands that I don't even know, I forget about, because I'm like landscaping, and they're all like, Nestor, what happened to your hand? And I'm like, oh, how did you even see that? It was in between my
Yeah.
fingers, right? Like they see everything. So I think our actions are so powerful in that
Mhm.
sense. Yeah, that's great. So we talk about protector a little bit. Tell me about that, right? Like what are your thoughts on the role of dad as a protector? What does that look like? How do you live in that role, and why is it important?
I always, so I have like certain characteristics, or even habits. I was in the Marines for 8 years, so I have like some little habits of like kind
Yeah,
of looking at exits and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I seen some videos where I think it was like another dad advice video, and he talks about like kind of sharing that knowledge. That's great knowledge, and it's like you should share it with your kids.
yeah,
So sometimes we're walking around, Walmart, Target, whatever. I'll try and ask them where the fastest exit is, or we'll try and talk about like one of the things that I hate, that gives me it's a tap into maybe what might be reality, or that you try and we hate when incidents happen at school, right? Everybody does.
yeah,
So I ordered some little ballistic kind of they're pretty light, but little ballistic kind of like plates to put in the backpacks.
yeah,
And it's just small things where it's like, I don't ever want this to happen, and you shouldn't, but this is an idea of like, you're always having something that might protect you. You're always having some kind of, I never want the girls to be shocked by reality, but I always want them to have an idea that not everyone is a nice person. Not everyone is, when we're crossing, when we're getting in the car, don't, let's not leave our door open if we don't have to. Or we're always doing like, even like some of the stuff, even protector is like, when we're walking in the parking lot, I'm on the side of like where the car is, or where the
yeah,
cars are, in case, if somebody's not paying attention, they're texting, they strike one of the people. It would be me or whatever. But even small stuff like that, I tell them why. I said, look, I'm gonna work on the outside because I'm the guy, and I'm the man I'm gonna protect y'all from, And I want to say it was last weekend. So I know it's not protecting, but it kind of goes into the little mentality. But I
yeah,
showed my fourth grader, I said, this is how we cut the grass. This is
yeah,
how we're going to put oil in it. This is what, this is how we start it. This is something that's helpful. This is, you don't want to walk backwards, and you don't want your foot to slip under, stuff like that. And I know some people don't like the roles of certain things with genders, like you don't want I always try and empower the girls by saying, if there's a guy here, he'll cut the grass for you, but you need to know how.
yeah,
I will show you how to pump the gas. Your husband or boyfriend one day should probably pump the gas, but I want you to know
yep,
how, because you have to be self-sufficient, but these are, you can't expect what you can't do. So I always want them to be like,
exactly.
we've changed the oil before. And I'm like, I want you to just know the general base of everything.
Yeah.
That way, just, it's so cool for them.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree with you, man. Even going back to, what you mentioned about the backpacks, like we live in such a, I think we live in probably technically the safest time in history, right? But there's still a lot of, there's still a lot of bad people out there. And, first of all, awesome. Thank you for your service, man. I know that,
Oh, thanks.
that's a really, awesome thing. And I appreciate that so much. And, that mindset too, I have so many friends that are veterans, and they say the same thing, right? Like, uh, there's, it's the simple things you can do, just being aware, and this goes into law enforcement too, right? Being
Mhm.
aware of your surroundings goes such a long way. We talk about different things, right? Like whether you carry or self-defense, some type of martial art or something like that. But I think it kind of starts, all of that even starts with just being aware and being aware of your surroundings, being mindful, being attentive wherever you go, right? We're all so busy, and sometimes we're so glued to our phones that we just don't take the time to look around, right? And maybe we'll get hit by a car on accident or something like you mentioned, right? And that, I think that's a big thing to teach kids, right? Be aware of your surroundings. uh try to be aware of people's intent, right? Is this a person who has good intent or bad intent, right? Your parents are always going to be the person that, or the people that you should trust more than anyone, above anyone else, right? But know who your neighbors are, things like that, right? They go such a long way. And I think about that, and trying to always, build a community of people that your kids can turn to, right? If need be.
Mhm. Yeah, we do. Even for weapons, the Marines have like a four. It's like a four weapon safety rule, and it's like you treat weapon like it's loaded, never point at anything
Yep.
you don't want to shoot. Finger off the trigger, and you keep it on safe. I've taken them to the rifle range and everything, but we went over like 6 months ahead of time. We're
Yeah.
memorizing these rules, and we
Oh,
always
that's
go over it.
awesome.
So like it's so like it'll be like a even like a Nerf gun,
Yep.
and they'll be like, hey, don't point that at me, or hey, don't do. And
That's
I'm like,
awesome.
it is really cool to see, because you're like, dang, it's just stuff. So like, because I told my wife, I said, we can't, because we can't. One day they could be hanging out with friends, and
Mhm.
somebody could have a pistol or something. I said, when
Mhm.
that day comes, you'd want them to at least be like, hey, is that thing loaded? Hey, let's not point it, and just
Yep.
small things you can get ahead of.
Yeah, absolutely. It's building that muscle memory, right? So, I mean, just people, there's such a big thing about firearms and that type of thing. But for me, my stance is, the more education and the more training people can get around firearms, the better, right? Because a gun isn't going to shoot itself, but it's human error is going to happen.
Hmm.
And that's what we can mitigate, right? That's what we should avoid, right? People, you see, I don't know how many, you've probably seen it more than I have, but people mishandling weapons and using the wrong holster, or putting their finger in the trigger when they shouldn't, near the trigger when they shouldn't, right? Things like that. It's just so crazy. And it's cool when people, I see a lot of videos online about it, when people teach their kids early on of, here are the things that you should do, here's how you should treat a firearm. Even, awesome with the Nerf gun too, right? They'll build the muscle memory,
Yeah.
so that when that time comes and you take them not to the range, or you take them hunting or whatever it might be, right, that accident can be completely avoided. So that's
Mhm.
that's great. um so what are some of the ways that you balance parenting responsibilities with your wife? I like the stance of, I'll do what I'm good at, and I'll let you do what you're good at, and then maybe we'll meet in the middle on some of the stuff that we're, are a little more ambiguous. How do you and your wife handle that?
I'd say my wife is. I say my wife is the leader in it, because I
Yeah,
try, and sometimes
yeah,
I'm a big goofball. Sometimes
yeah.
the situation with the girls is more serious than that's also sometimes uh you know fifth grade, fourth grade, sixth grade girl issues are just stuff that
Oh
I'm not
man.
too, you're, I don't know. I thought like, so it's almost like a different language sometimes. And so she takes the lead on most. I try to help where I can, when I can. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's pretty cool. Sometimes the dad will get the lead on, you know, um, like sometimes my oldest will come talk to me about something that's going on in school, and I'm like, have you talked to mom about this? You're picking me? Like, she's like, oh no, I'm gonna tell you, I just want to tell you first. I'm like, okay, yeah. Some of the stuff there's not a memo for, but
Yeah.
that's why it's important, because every day we talk about, our best part, low part, right? Every day we have some conversation. We talk to them every day before they go to school, right? So like as a dad, if you're talking to them every day, and when a serious convo comes up, it's not so foreign that you're talking to them, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. It
Yeah.
comes off more natural.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to be that dad that all of a sudden it seems like you're taking that interest, right? Then they get suspicious, then they get standoffish potentially, right? It's more like, oh, this is dad. He's just asking the questions that he typically asks, right? Like, how was your day? What went bad? What went well? That type of thing, right? That's interesting. Um, I can't even imagine. I joke around when they talk about my daughter dating eventually, I'm like, oh, she can't date till she's 40. Like
Yeah.
that's a long ways away. And then I have my father-in-law who he says, oh, my wife has a young siblings, and then he's like, well, I don't have to worry about dating, they're going to the nunnery, so it's not gonna be an issue. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, maybe my daughter will too. Yeah, but all joking aside, I think it's going to be interesting navigating those conversations. So, I love hearing that. It gets me mentally prepared of what should I be thinking about, right? And how would I handle that situation? How would I handle it now? And I'm sure that's going to be completely different when I'm, in that situation. So trying to
Well,
pick some stuff up.
one of the things that drives me nuts is like when like for some dads, it'll be like like if the kid's having a hard time at school, somebody's messing with them or stuff, the
Yeah.
response is like, I just tell them to like, beat them up, whatever. And I
Yeah.
always think like, all right, have you ever taught your kid how to beat somebody up, or how to,
Yeah.
and then also when you're a dad, you don't ever want anything, even if your kid is going to win and beat someone up, you don't even want them to get hit or even feel that kind of aggression or whatever.
Yeah.
So that always drives me nuts. I don't like hearing like, I just tell them, of course I understand if a dispute happens or whatever, I understand that stuff, but I don't
Yeah.
like the idea of, so one of the things that I saw that I read about is really helpful for, because my oldest, I think, was having a hard time, and this kid just kind of giving him a hard time, whatever. And I looked up, one of the big things is you're just supposed to ask the antagonizer, like, why? Why are they? Yeah, just
Yeah.
straightforward, ask them why. And she did
Yeah.
it. She asked him like, hey, why do you keep messing with me? And they didn't have like
Yeah.
an answer, and it just kind of
Yeah.
puts the spotlight on them, and they leave it alone. And I'm like, holy
Yeah.
cow, that's awesome. These are
Yeah.
things we got to talk about, or that we got to do.
Yeah, it like disarms people, right? Like, hey, like, or even ask. I've heard something along that line of thinking where you just ask them, "Hey, are you okay? Is everything okay?"
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and if it comes across with sincerity, I think is the important part, because if you say that like sarcastically, it's probably going to antagonize them more. But I think just checking in on people, because you never know. I'm a big proponent of that. You never know what someone's going through or what's going on, right? And typically that bully mentality always comes from somewhere, right? Like there's abuse in the household, or there's something that's going on, or whatever it may be. So yeah, man, I agree with that. I think so many people are so quick to say like, oh, my kid will beat up that other kid, and you just tell them like, get in a fight. And
Yeah.
it's fighting should be the last resort. And I say that as a martial artist. I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and if I can avoid the fight, I'm going to avoid it. And nine times out of 10 you can. And you
Yeah.
don't want to go through the headache of of if you win the fight, which best case scenario, right? You could potentially go to jail. You could get hurt yourself or hurt someone and have to live with that. And then the other side of it is you don't know if someone's carrying a weapon, or they'll whatever it may be. There's nothing good that comes from it. So the best thing you can do is just avoid it, and
Yeah.
potentially using your words even better to avoid it.
You would have to fight the next bully, that you encounter, and
Yeah.
the next one,
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you can communicate, it's way better,
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
So
the bullying thing is the communicating. They're just communicating, and or
yeah.
regulating what they're feeling at home. And
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes to, I think dads play a role in that too, right? if you are a dad who has bully mentality, guess what? Your kids are probably going to act the same way, right? And
Mhm.
they're picking it up somewhere. And it's not to say that there's not outliers where the kids just pick it up on their own and it's just they're naturally aggressive, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
But odds are they're seeing it at home, and that's important, right? If it's important to take that step to just think about that, right? Are your kids learning that from you? And hopefully people can pick that up before, something bad happens and their kid
Mhm.
is in a bad situation. But yeah, I think that's something to definitely be aware of.
Mhm.
So tell me, who served as a dad role model to you? Was it your own dad? Was it other dads? I bring up the point that I think people can get dad role models from anywhere, right? Ideally from their own dad, but I think it's possible to find role models everywhere.
Yeah, that's a really good, because when I say that, I try to not take away from my own dad, because my dad was he was fierce, but he was there, and we played all the time. He spent time with me, and made jokes with me and took me to games, all that stuff, everything that that a dad's. He was tough disciplinary, but he countered it by being he was one of those tough kind of Mexican dads or whatever, but he would
Yeah.
take me to ball games and stuff like that. But even in the community, because I grew up in the city where the neighbors' dads they were they weren't like talking to you about your feelings, but they would say, like, they would invite you to go work on the roof with them, or the other one would invite you to shovel the they're cutting the weeds in the alley, and they say, hey, do you want to grab, do you want to learn how to use a weed eater, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there was a park not too far to where I want to say they're probably in their 20s maybe. And when you're a kid, every adult is an adult, so those
Yeah.
guys would end up being mentors. And I had so many figures growing up to where and I really didn't. I told my wife too. I there was a guy in my neighborhood that was a total, and I mean total, absolute drunk. That he would walk
Yeah.
around the neighborhoods, no shirt on, drunk the whole time. We'd find him. I'm 13, riding my bike. I'd find him passed out in alleys and stuff. But as
Yeah.
strange as all that is, he was even cool. He would even give
Yeah.
like good like advice. Like, no, like, he would always hide it when we'd come around, stuff like that. We're little kids and he'd hide it and stuff like that. But there was always good. There was always a good bunch around. And also one of things that my dad did, which I tried to do too, is let's say I had like an uncle or something that was doing something like that was like abusive to his wife or something. My
Yeah.
dad would be like, we're not going to see him again. Even
Yeah.
if that was my dad's, buddy to drink beers with, he's like, nope. And he would have a hard stance and stuff. So I
Yeah.
try and do, like, if I hear of something, or, other neighbors doing something that I don't think fits our morals and ethos, or whatever, I'm like, nope, I'm not going over there. I don't support that. I don't even want to give the idea that I'm okay with it, because I don't want the girls to think that's a pass for them to be okay with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. One thing I talk about is, the guys who run out on their kids, right? They'll have a kid and they just won't be there, and they'll go. There's a lot of guys that'll go so as far as they'll go have another family, right? They'll abandon one kid but have another family. I've told my wife that I'm like, I can't associate with anyone that would ever do that, right? To me, that's one of the worst things you could potentially do. So, to your point, I think it's important to not expose your kids to that, to terrible people like that, whatever it may be, right? I think everyone has an opportunity to redeem themselves in some capacity, right? But
Mhm.
until those people are on that path to redemption, I think those, whatever it may be, right? If there's a drug addiction, there's alcohol abuse, or domestic violence or anything like that, while it's happening, that's the last place where you should have your kids, right? So, and that goes to anyone, right? Like you mentioned, if it's a family member, if it's a close friend that just,
Mhm.
is going through something, it's the kids come first. And, unfortunately, it's like, you might have to say goodbye to some people, and I think that's important too. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a tribe, man. It's a community. And, I had some best friends who their dads ended up being like a role model to me, teaching me how to like mow the lawn and do a lot of different things of like, hey, this is how even one funny thing I picked up from one of my best friend's dad was always to when you're at home, always do something because I always wondered, I'm like, why is he like moving a stack of bricks from one end of the yard to the other? And he told me one day, he's like, if I'm not doing something at home, my wife is gonna be mad and she's really gonna come down on me for not being basically productive or helpful. So he always taught me in his own way of like, make sure you're helping around the house. Like don't just sit there and do nothing, right? Be
Yeah.
active and ideally you should ask, what needs to be done and help in that way. But he had his own way of doing it, but I picked that up from him, so that was helpful.
Mhm.
Yeah. Nice. So what do you think are some of the big mistakes that dads can avoid?
I'd say a big thing that you could avoid is using how you grew up in your time frame during this time frame and this, because everything's different. Everything is like, we're in a
Yeah.
social media age where everything is different, to where even there's I like, even like getting spanked as a kid or something.
Yeah.
If you got spanked, it doesn't mean that that's how sometimes people translate how they were disciplined on how they're going to discipline. But you're the chance to change it. You're the chance to talk issues out instead of spanking or something like that, or anything that you wanted as a kid, or as a role model, or as a dad. Now's your chance. Don't mess it up.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we can put away the belts. I know as a kid, I got hit with belts with whatever it was, right? Whatever was around extension cords. And yeah, I say that as my mom's actually flying into town. So she constantly remembers it. She's like, I'm sorry for hitting you. And like I needed it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I deserved it. Thank you for doing it. But yeah, I think there's a different way, right? And I think it starts with communication. One of the things we touched on earlier, right? Talk to your kids, figure out what's going on with them, right? Why are they mad? There's probably a reason, right?
Mhm.
What's making them upset, rather than just saying, yeah, go to your room, and then they hit you if you leave your room or whatever it may be, right? So yeah, I think that's a good one for sure, right? Just because something was okay in a time period doesn't make it all right now. And it honestly, it's probably not the most effective way. Especially with hitting kids, it's just not going to solve anything.
Yeah, you wouldn't want anyone to cause pain, or pain or whatever on your kids. So it's like, don't let it be you. Don't let them
Yeah,
associate you as the scary one or whatever.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. What do you think is most underappreciated about dads? What do you think that we do goes under the radar?
Oh yeah, I would say, for me, my wife and the girls really appreciate me and my time for work and stuff. But I would say, probably generally, just for the dads out there, is they go away for 8 hours and they come back, and but I'm like, sometimes, man, they're out in the rain, out breaking their backs, out landscaping, like just tough stuff, man. Like, and you don't
Yeah.
realize it until, because even maybe when you're a kid, you might not have noticed. You've probably seen your dad sweating, working
Mhm.
his ass off, and it doesn't click in your head, like, dang, he's probably tired, or he's probably, maybe he's not. Maybe him coming in and finding out that that me and my brother were wrestling and broke the TV. Maybe that was the
Yeah.
last thing that he needed. Coming in the door, making minimum
Mhm.
money or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's another challenge too. Is sometimes I'll come home, and when I just get, work just beats the crap out of me, I'll tell the girls too, like, there was a rough one. And the sometimes the therapy of a fourth grader is some of the coolest stuff you'll hear. Hey,
Yeah.
why don't I think we're gonna get McDonald's later. I think that'll be good. I'm like, yeah, that actually that actually will be good.
It's like, don't worry, Dad, we're getting some ice cream later. It's gonna be fine. And then you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you know what? It will be fine.
Yeah, yeah, as
It's
simple as it is. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
How about that?
It's like, what, it feels like kids have such a good way of like simplifying things down, right? Sometimes it feels like we overthink things as adults, and they look at it for what it is. And sometimes that's so refreshing to hear that, right? Of like, here, you know what? It's not that complicated, or you know what? It's not that serious.
Yep. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
when I talk about the intricates of, like, like talking to my manager, like, oh, I didn't want to go, here, but he's telling me to go here. And then it's like, what, did you tell him? I'm like, well, no, because I already know what he's going to say. And then it's like, oh, but you tell us to tell them. All right, fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They don't have any, like, I guess, like, filters or biases to kind of get them to say one thing or another, right? They just kind of take things at what they are.
Yeah, the other the other day I was parked facing outward to leave, and it's trash day, and I'm taking my fourth grader to school. It's one of her last school days. I cut it hard to the right and I hit the trash can. I couldn't believe it. I hit the trash can and I go, oh damn it. I said, I hit the trash can. And she goes, oh, don't worry. Those are mom's bumper cars. She hits them all the time. And I said, you know what? Thank you for that.
That's where those scratches came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you know what? It goes back to something I've been thinking about, and it's, if I was taught empathy from a young age, I feel like that would have been so beneficial, right? Again, trying to put yourself in the shoes of others, right? And you know, as a dad, I'm going to try to do that and put myself in the shoes of my daughter. But I think teaching your kids that too, right? Of like, hey, why don't you try that for a second of trying to think of, put yourself in the bully shoes, put yourself in mom's shoes when she's stressed out and yelling, put yourself in dad's shoes when he comes home and he's just tired and he may not be as attentive and excited as you are on a certain day. But that's a hard, I think, concept to grasp, especially early on. But trying to reinforce that, I think, would go such a long way. And I think, as adults also, like, trying to practice that, it goes such a long way.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's tough because it's one of the things that we don't, I didn't discover till I was almost 30 on,
Mhm.
but I do try and explain to the girls. I say, sometimes the kids will stop playing with them and they got to move on to a new friend group. And then, hey, what happened to your friend? Oh, we don't really talk to her anymore. And then we try and say, hey, remember how, because sympathy and empathy, it's sympathy is, the situation, empathy is you felt the situation before. So we'll
Yeah.
try and be like, hey, do you remember how that felt when, like, you should invite them in? Remember you wanted them to invite you back? And
Yeah.
it kind of, you have the memory of, like, I remember how that made you feel 2 years ago, and it might seem like a lifetime ago, but I remember, and maybe that
Yeah.
can help you, Yeah, I completely agree on the empathy part. Completely.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. What do you think? What do you think it's going to take to create a better dad culture? And what do you think the state of, like, a culture is right now?
I think it's getting better compared to maybe how I would view it in the 90s and prior, where it's just like the dad. I think now there's more communities like yours where it's like dads could just be like, I really don't know what to do in this situation, or I really don't know, or I've even seen where, like, dads are talking about they want a career change, and even talking
Yeah.
to other dads about it and seeing the dads support them and that kind of stuff. I'm like, I couldn't imagine that back before. It was just kind of like dads end up being like carpenter, and their dad taught them to be a
Yeah.
carpenter, and they're a carpenter for a lifetime. And then,
Yeah.
you want to get into something else, and that's kind of the, that's foreign for them. They're like, what do you mean a computer job and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
But I think it's getting better. I think it's pretty cool. I think even like when I was telling my wife about this podcast, and she was like, "Oh, you should do it because, like, you like being a dad, and maybe like yeah, we'll click on the dad stuff." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool,
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to your wife.
Yeah,
On
yeah,
the podcast. That's
yeah,
awesome. Yeah. Yeah. You know what? When I thought about this too, I was talking to my wife about it, and I was telling her, there's some pretty decent content out there for dads, in the sense of, how what type of products to buy, and some type of advice in that sense too, like, here's some of the stuff that you should avoid, but like that kind of thing. But it felt like there wasn't really anyone talking about, like, what's it like to be a dad, how do we get better as dads, and then definitely not a place where they can come together. And that was really why I wanted to create a community. And I actually there's a, I'd love for you to join it. There's a link on my TikTok, on the link tree, that you can join that for free. And it's basically a forum where we can put the different things of like, here's something that I went through today, or, here's something that I'm dealing with right now. Has anyone dealt with this before? And, just sharing experiences, and that way we can all get better, right? Because we all want to be better dads, I think. At least the good ones that are trying to do it right. And I think just trying to find places where we can do that and make it as easy as possible are important. And that's why I wanted to really start this. And my wife was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Nope, she's all for me being a better dad, obviously, but it's just something that I keep hearing more and more. And it's powerful. I like hearing people's experiences, and, selfishly, I love learning.
Mhm.
I love learning from other dads. So it's exciting for me.
Yeah, I think it's great. Yeah, I have to join it. And it gives it's so funny, it's so much perspective on different eyes on everything, because
Mhm.
like for me, um like our youngest is now, she's about one now, or a little
Mhm.
bit older than one. And my
Yeah,
friend just had a newborn. And so I was like,
yeah,
oh dude, I got you. I got you. Everything
yeah,
that was just kind of like, you learn,
yeah,
at 2 in the morning, like I should have had this prepped, or I should
yeah,
have had this. I'm like, oh dude, I got you. Only
yeah,
and you have the vision of the hindsight.
yeah, yeah,
So I think the community would be really cool, because it's also like, sure, I got all that, but it's in the past. And so now, as we're approaching the terrible twos or whatever,
yeah.
and maybe I get some perspective from different dads about what to expect on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like we can help each other along the different stages that we have either been through or haven't been through, right? And you mentioned, it's funny because my daughter's gonna be 10 weeks on Monday. And I already feel like, I'm like, oh, I got 0 to 10 weeks down. Like, if anyone needs some type of advice, I could help with that. Right. And I'm like, but then I think about it, I'm like, I really don't know shit. But
Yeah.
if I can help in some kind of way, right, it's helpful, right? It's going to help someone. And for me, one of the scariest things I went through in these 10 weeks was my daughter got sick. And we had no idea what it was. And we went to urgent care. They sent us, basically, they said, we don't know exactly what it is. It could be a cold, it could be RSV. So you guys
Mhm.
should go to the ER. So that was a scary moment of us going to the ER. And they ran all the tests on her, and luckily she came back negative for everything. And it was just a pretty bad cold. And that was tough on its own. But just knowing that and being able to navigate some of that, getting some advice would have been super helpful. And I have a lot of family, right? But sometimes it feels like, as men, we internalize a lot, right? And sometimes it's only, for me, it's a lot more helpful to talk to another dad, to say, hey, like, what did you go, how was this like for you when you went through this? And I think the more conversations we can create, the better, right?
Yeah, I think like even for the emergency room visit, like it's terrifying. It's really scary, and it's really, and I think like if you talk to another dad that like, oh, we might have to go to the ER, and you could be like, just go get all the tests, it'll be okay. But I know
Yeah,
that it's scary.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what advice would you give to any dad, say like a new dad, or even a dad that has more experience? What's some advice that you would like to pass on?
To be open to change, and go on to TikTok, follow the Dad Cartel, check out the podcast. But seriously, go on to like for me, man, I was on YouTube like crazy, leading all the way up until she was born. I was on there, and then even now I'm looking at little TikTok pages where it's like stuff that's helpful for good shows to watch. Like sometimes there's shows that might not be too good for the baby, and you're like, oh shit, I had no idea, I just thought cartoons were cartoons. But
Yeah.
just be open, and then it's okay, like you're not going to know everything, and that's totally fine. It would be scary
Mhm.
if you did know everything.
Yeah, it's like, how do you prepare for something like that? What I found funniest, and I think is one of the pieces of advice I can give now, just in my brief tenure as a dad, is it would have been so helpful to have like if you want to give like a gift to someone that is having a child, give them like a gift card to like DoorDash or something like that, because you're so swamped those
Yeah.
first like couple of weeks that like you don't have time to make food. So if you want to give anything, I think like a gift card to that or Uber Eats or something like that would be helpful, because then you can just order something and it just shows up and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
That food was like the trickiest part for us.
And actually another thing of advice, that's genius, is as soon as we found out that we were gonna have a newborn, as soon as we found out, I started doing different diaper sizes. And we had a
Yeah.
whole closet full and everything. And then on Amazon, they got like big boxes of like baby wipes. So by the time she was born, I had a whole closet full of diapers, and the stuff that you don't want to be running out in the store at 3 a.m. or whatever. And then there's also like subscriptions. There's like the Honest subscription. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yeah.
Get the diapers delivered. And so
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier nowadays from what I would think, and you got Amazon reviews. So
Yeah.
it's easier than maybe what it was, I don't know, before the 90s, 80s or whatever. Car seats are
Yeah.
better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's trying to prepare for the unexpected, I guess, which that in itself is hard. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, man, thank you so much, JoJo, for jumping on. The hour blew by, man. It was great talking to you. And any last words, anything you want to share with the dads out there?
Oh no, I appreciate your podcast. I think everybody should check it out. If you want to look for me on TikTok, just look up Rookie Driver. I'll pop up. And I'll tag you in a video and make sure that get all the dads out to you, as many as I can. And then yeah, shoot me a good address and we'll send you some of the Big Rig Coffee Company.
Absolutely. As a dad, we need coffee. So super excited. I'm actually drinking some right now as we speak. So it's, man, I love this stuff. So I need it more than anything, I think. I love it too. But yeah, I'll check that out, and excited to try it out, and always excited to try some good coffee.
Yeah, thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. So thanks everyone for listening to the Dad Cartel podcast. Subscribe and share this episode if you found it valuable, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you're a dad that would like to participate as a guest, feel free to email me at prouddad@dadcartel.com. Last, make sure to follow JoJo Rookie Driver on TikTok. And thanks again, man.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let me pause the recording.